Have you ever stood at the edge of a shadow and wondered if it might be hiding something sinister? That was the very question that gnawed at me as I approached the decaying facade of the old Whitmore Mansion, its once grand architecture now cloaked in a shroud of ivy and neglect. The townsfolk of Crestwood had whispered stories about this place, tales of flickering lights and voices echoing through its empty halls. But I was a skeptic, armed with nothing but curiosity and my camera. Little did I know, the truth lurking within those walls was far stranger than anything I could have imagined. My name is David Hawthorne, a freelance journalist with a penchant for the eerie and unexplained. I spent my childhood in this very town, where the rustling leaves seemed to carry secrets, and the night air was thick with the weight of history. The Whitmore Mansion had always been an enigma to me, a silent giant standing watch over the neighborhood of Maple Grove, and I couldn't resist the pull of its mystery. I had my own ghosts to confront, memories of my father's disappearance. When I was just a boy, a tragedy that had cast a long shadow over my life. I often wondered if my father had sought solace in places like this, where the veil between the living and the dead was perilously thin. As I stepped through the creaking front door, the air turned stale, as if the house itself had been holding its breath for years. Dust motes danced in the shafts of dim light that filtered through the grimy windows, and I felt an unsettling chill creep down my spine. I had come seeking stories of the supernatural, but the atmosphere was so heavy, so alive with an unseen presence that I could hardly breathe. The walls, adorned with peeling wallpaper and splintered wood, seemed to whisper secrets of their own. Stories of laughter that had long faded, of lives once vibrant, now reduced to echoes. I wandered through the ground floor, my footsteps muffled by layers of dust that had settled like a thick blanket. And then it happened. A sudden gust of wind swept through the corridor, slamming the door behind me. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Was it just the wind, or was there something more? I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see a shadow darting from my view. Instead, I was met with an eerie stillness, the kind that felt charged with anticipation, as if the house itself was waiting for something to unfold. But it wasn't just the wind that stirred the air. I could almost hear a faint melody playing from somewhere deep within the mansion. It was a haunting tune, reminiscent of a lullaby, yet laced with an undercurrent of sorrow that sent shivers through me. I followed the sound, drawn like a moth to a flame, deeper into the heart of the mansion. The walls closed in around me, and I felt the weight of my father's absence pressing down, as if the house was aware of my past, of the secrets I had yet to uncover. With every step, the atmosphere thickened, and the air crackled with energy. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone, that someone or something was watching me. As I reached the doorway to the old parlor, I hesitated. What awaited me on the other side? Would I find answers to the questions that haunted me, or would I stumble into a darkness I could not escape? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever lay ahead. But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. As darkness enveloped the Whitmore Mansion, the faint melody I had been following began to shift, becoming more insistent, almost desperate. The shadows in the corners of the room deepened, stretching and twisting like fingers reaching out for me. I took a step into the parlor, the floorboards groaning under my weight, and felt an overwhelming sense of foreboding. I was no longer just a curious journalist. I was a trespasser in a world that seemed to pulse with life and memory. Suddenly, the music ceased, leaving an eerie silence that hung between me and the walls. My heart raced as I instinctively raised my camera, trying to capture whatever lay before me in a desperate attempt to find clarity. But before I could snap a photo, I heard a soft voice behind me. "You shouldn't be here." I spun around to find a figure standing in the doorway. An older woman, her silver hair pulled back, tightly, her eyes sharp and piercing. "Who are you?" I stammered, my skepticism momentarily forgotten. "Margaret Whitmore," she replied, her voice low and steady. "The last living heir of this house, if you can call it living." She stepped into the light, revealing a face etched with lines of sorrow and resilience. "You're not the Ye, first to come seeking the stories of the past. But be warned, some stories are best left untold." I could sense the weight of her words, the warning laced with genuine concern. "I'm just here to poke around in the darkness," she interrupted. "This place holds secrets that can consume you. I lost my brother here, and my father before him. They were drawn to the same shadows you are now." Her revelation sent a chill through me. "What happened to them?" "They sought answers, like you," she said, her gaze drifting to the floor. "But they found something else, something that doesn't want to be found." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "I need to know the truth about my father," I said, the urgency in my voice surprising even me. "He disappeared years ago, and everyone said he was last seen near this mansion." Margaret's eyes softened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of empathy in them. "Then you must understand that some truths come with a price." Just then, the front door slammed shut with a deafening bang, causing both of us to jump. The air in the room grew heavy, and the temperature dropped. I could see my breath as a white cloud in front of me. "We need to leave," I urged. But Margaret remained unmoved, her eyes fixed on something behind me. "What have you done?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. I turned to see a flickering light emanating from the hallway, casting grotesque shadows that danced along the walls. I felt the pull of the unknown, the same lure that had drawn me into the mansion in the first place. "I need to go see what it is," I said, though a part of me screamed to run. Margaret grabbed my arm, her grip strong. "You don't understand. It's not safe. You can't just—" But before she could finish, the flickering intensified, and a voice echoed through the hall, calling my name. "David, come to me." I felt my resolve wavering, caught in a web of fear and curiosity. "I have to know," I said, shaking off her grip. "I have to find out what happened." "David, wait!" Margaret shouted, but I was already moving towards the light, each step pulling me deeper into the mansion's heart, deeper into the darkness that had claimed so many before me. As I crossed the threshold into the hallway, I glanced back at Margaret. Her expression was a mix of fear and desperation, and in that moment I knew I was crossing a line that might sever our connection forever. But the pull of the unknown was too strong, and I felt myself slipping away from the safety of her warning and into the abyss of the Whitmore Mansion's secrets. The melody returned, louder now, and I stepped into the unknown, ready to confront the shadows that had haunted my family for generations. Little did I know, the truth would not only test my resolve, but would also challenge the very fabric of my understanding of reality. As I stepped into the hallway, the flickering light engulfed me, revealing a tapestry of memories that felt both foreign and hauntingly familiar. The walls were lined with portraits of the Whitmore family, their eyes seeming to follow me, filled with silent judgments and unspoken truths. I paused, my breath hitching in my throat as I recognized a face among them. My father, much younger, his smile wide and carefree. The melody swelled, pulling at my heartstrings, and I found myself whispering his name, "Dad?" But the response was not the warmth of recognition. It was a gnawing dread, creeping into the edges of my mind. "David." The voice echoed again, more insistent now, and I hesitated. The shadows around me seemed to ripple, almost alive, urging me forward. I felt a resonance deep within my chest, as if the mansion itself was breathing, alive with the history of my family. Suddenly, the floor beneath me shifted, and I stumbled, grasping the wall for support. As I did, my fingers brushed against a hidden latch. A door swung open in front of me, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. My heart raced. Was this where my father had gone? I hesitated, the echo of Margaret's warning ringing in my ears. But the overwhelming need to uncover the truth pushed me onward. I descended the stairs, the air growing colder with each step. At the bottom, I found myself in a dimly lit cellar filled with dust and cobwebs, the air thick with decay. My eyes adjusted and I noticed something in the corner, an old trunk, weathered and worn. It looked as if it had been untouched for decades. My heart pounded as I approached, drawn by an inexplicable force. As I lifted the lid, a rush of memories flooded my mind, images of my childhood, of laughter and warmth, of a fire crackling in the living room. But then they twisted, darkening, into shadows of confusion and pain. I saw flashes of arguments, my father's face twisted in anger, my mother's tears. The memories spiraled, mixing with the present until I could barely distinguish between them. Suddenly, a cold draft swept through the cellar, extinguishing the flickering light. Panic surged within me, and I fumbled for my phone, its screen the only source of illumination. The beam of light fell upon the trunk, and I gasped. Inside were letters, yellowed with age, and among them a photograph of my father standing with a woman I didn't recognize. The look in their eyes was intimate, filled with secrets that felt like knives slicing into my heart. David, the voice returned, now laced with urgency. You're running out of time. I glanced around, feeling an oppressive weight closing in on me. I was beginning to question my sanity. Was I truly alone down here, or had I awakened something? The shadows began to twist and shift again, and I realized with horror that they were forming shapes, figures I recognized from the portraits above, their faces contorted with anguish. Margaret's warning echoed in my mind. This was more than a family mystery. It was a haunting, a legacy of darkness that my family had tried to bury. I stumbled back, my heart racing, realizing that the truth was not just about my father's disappearance, but something much more sinister. Help me, I whispered into the darkness. But the shadows only laughed, their voices mingling with the melody that now turned into a cacophony of anguish and despair. I was not just facing the past. I was confronting a reckoning that could shatter everything I believed. In that moment, I knew I needed to escape, to pull myself back from the brink of insanity and find Margaret. But the shadows tightened around me, and I understood. I was no longer just a seeker of truth. I had become part of the very story that sought to consume me. The shadows closed in around me, a swirling mass of grief and anger that pressed against my skin like a suffocating fog. My fingers trembled as I clutched the edge of the trunk, the letters spilling out like secrets begging to be heard. The faces from the portraits above loomed in my mind, their expressions a testament to a history I had only begun to scratch the surface of. David. The voice echoed again, sharper this time, a cruel reminder of the urgency of my situation. I could feel the rhythmic pulse of dread thrumming in my chest, urging me to make a choice. I had to confront whatever it was that haunted this place, to either reclaim my family's legacy or allow it to consume me entirely. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned, and there stood Margaret at the top of the staircase, her figure silhouetted against the faint light. David. "Get out of there!" she shouted, her voice breaking through the chaos swirling in my mind. The shadows around me hesitated, momentarily distracted by her presence. I felt a surge of hope. "Margaret, I need help," I called back, but the shadows twisted, their laughter rising again, drowning out my words. With each passing second, the shadows grew bolder, reaching toward me with ghostly fingers. I could feel their chill creeping into my bones, and I knew I couldn't linger. "You don't understand!" I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. "I need to know the truth!" Margaret's eyes widened, and she stepped cautiously down the stairs. "You need to leave, David! Please!" She was pleading now, her voice laced with fear. I could sense her reluctance to come any closer, the darkness that surrounded me pushing her away as it sought to ensnare me. I glanced back at the trunk, the letters and photograph glinting in the dim light. "I can't just abandon this," I argued, torn between the pull of the past and the instinct to flee. "It's all connected. My father, this house, the darkness." "Your father!" Margaret's voice rose above the din, cutting through the cacophony. "Your father made choices that led to this. You can't change the past, David." Her words struck me like a physical blow. The truth was, I had been so consumed by the need to understand, to connect with the father I barely knew, that I hadn't considered the cost. The shadows swirled around me, almost as if they were listening, feeding off my turmoil. "Make a choice," Margaret urged, her voice firm now, piercing through the darkness. "You can either confront the past or let it destroy you, but you can't do both." The weight of her words settled upon me like a heavy shroud. I closed my eyes, feeling the shadows inch closer, their whispers an intoxicating mix of temptation and fear. I could stay, delve deeper into the darkness, and perhaps uncover the truth about my father. But at what price? Or I could turn away, leave the past buried, and save myself from this haunting. In that moment, clarity washed over me. I couldn't let the shadows win. I had to choose life over the echoes of despair. "You're right," I breathed, my voice steadier now. "I can't let this consume me." With that, I took a step back from the trunk, the shadows recoiling as if stung. "I'm leaving!" I declared, my voice louder, more resolute. I turned to Margaret, my heart racing. "Let's go!" As I sprinted toward the staircase, I could feel the darkness clawing at my back, desperate to drag me down into its depths. But I wouldn't turn back. I wouldn't be its prisoner. I burst past Margaret, my heart pounding, and we began to ascend. The stairs together, the shadows swirling behind us in a furious tempest. The weight of my family's past lingered in the air. But I was determined to break free. With each step, I felt the walls of the mansion tremble as if they were aware of my defiance, and I knew the confrontation was far from over. The real battle was just beginning. As we reached the top of the staircase, I could feel the shadows clawing at my heels, their whispers turning into anguished cries, a cacophony of lost souls desperate for my surrender. But I pressed on, adrenaline surging through me, propelling me toward the safety of the hallway. Margaret followed closely behind, her breath coming in quick gasps. "David, we need to keep moving," she urged, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting the darkness to surge after us. I didn't need to be told twice. The weight of the trunk's secrets still pressed on my heart, but I could feel the shadows receding, their power waning as we escaped their grasp. We burst through the doorway into the main foyer, my heart pounding in rhythm with the frantic thrum of the mansion. As I turned to look back, I thought I saw a flicker of movement in the shadows, a final desperate attempt to reclaim me. But it was gone, dissipating into the corners of the old house, leaving a silence that felt both eerie and liberating. Once outside, I collapsed onto the stone steps, gasping for breath. The night air was cool against my flushed skin, a stark contrast to the suffocating heat of the shadows that had pursued me. I felt a mix of relief and disillusionment wash over me. The truth I sought about my father and the darkness that had consumed him remained elusive, yet I had escaped with my life, though not unscathed. Margaret knelt beside me, her eyes wide with concern as she examined my face. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice softening. I could see the worry etched into her features, and I realized then how my journey had affected her as well. "I'm fine," I managed to say, though the tremor in my voice betrayed me. "But I need to know what this all means." As I looked up at her, I could see the resolve forming in her eyes. "You can't confront this alone. We'll figure it out together," she vowed. I nodded, grateful for her unwavering support, yet still haunted by the knowledge that the past would not let us go so easily. Just then, a low rumble echoed from the depths of the mansion, a warning that our confrontation had only quelled the darkness temporarily. My heart sank as I thought of the letters still scattered in the trunk, tales of betrayal and sorrow that had yet to be fully told. Margaret's hand found mine, grounding me in that moment. "We have to gather those letters, David. They hold the key to understanding what happened here," she urged. I knew she was right, but an unsettling chill crawled up my spine, one that hinted at deeper mysteries still lurking within the mansion's walls. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows of the porch, a silhouette I recognized all too well. It was my brother Thomas, his expression frantic. "David, I've been looking for you!" he shouted, panic evident in his voice. The implications of his arrival sent a fresh wave of anxiety through me. What had he uncovered? As I stood up, the weight of my family's legacy pressed down on me once more, and I realized that the shadows I had barely escaped were not just my own. They were part of a larger, more intricate tapestry of secrets waiting to be unraveled. "Let's talk," I said, my voice steadier than before. "There's so much more to this than we realized." With Margaret and Thomas by my side, I felt a flicker of hope amid the uncertainty. The night may have been dark, but together we would face whatever awaited us. And as we turned back toward the mansion, I knew that our journey was only just beginning. The true confrontation with our family's past was yet to come, and I was ready to meet it head-on. As we stepped back into the mansion's shadowy embrace, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not just confronting our family's past, but also awakening something that had long lain dormant. The air thickened around us, heavy with unspoken words and unresolved tensions. Thomas, his face pale, glanced nervously at the entrance as if it were a portal to our worst fears. "What if we're not ready for this?" he whispered, the tremor in his voice echoing my own doubts. I exchanged a glance with Margaret, her determination still shining, but even she seemed to sense the gravity of what lay ahead. "We have to try," I said, though my heart raced with uncertainty. The trunk's letters were more than just remnants of our family's history. They were the keys to understanding the darkness that loomed, threatening to swallow us whole. As we ventured back inside, the mansion groaned, almost in protest, as if it knew we were trespassing on sacred ground. Each step felt like a countdown, the shadows flickering with life, as if they were aware of our every move. I could almost hear them whispering again, taunting us with half-formed threats and promises of revelations. When we reached the room that had held the trunk, the air crackled with tension. The letters lay scattered, waiting for us to decipher the truth. But I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever we uncovered might change us irrevocably. What would we find? Would it be redemption or something darker? Suddenly, a chilling breeze swept through the room, extinguishing our resolve. I looked at Margaret and Thomas, both of them frozen in fear as shadows danced in the corners of my vision. My heart raced, not just with fear, but with the realization that our journey was far from over. What awaited us in those letters remained an enigma, a riddle that could lead us to salvation or damnation. As I reached for the first envelope, I felt the weight of destiny pressing down on me, the mansion itself holding its breath in anticipation. In that moment, I understood. The darkness was part of us now, woven into our very being. We were bound to uncover the truth, even if it meant facing our most profound fears. Would we emerge stronger, or would we become the very shadows we sought to escape? As I opened the letter, the words blurred before my eyes, and I felt a pull, an invitation to dive deeper into the unknown. The path ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing. We had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends, so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story.